Welcome back. This video is designed to help you fall asleep faster. If you want to support my work, please like and subscribe. Also, what time are you watching and where are you from? Daily Reddit Stories Day 2. Today's question: what's your true life story that nobody will believe? Just after I turned 19, I was arrested and charged for an armed robbery I was completely innocent of. I spent 10 months in jail, 6 of which I spent in solitary confinement on suicide watch. I spent my birthday at a resort hotel with my girlfriend at the time. That night at around 3 a.m. the front desk was robbed by 2 people, one with a gun and one with a knife. We were questioned when we left the hotel at 11 a.m., since we roughly matched a height-weight description of the masked robbers. Later that day, it was discovered that my girlfriend had used a bad credit card to pay for the room, unbeknownst to me. And we were both publicly arrested on a sidewalk and taken to the state police barracks in handcuffs, without a word on what we were being charged with. We were taken to separate rooms and questioned for hours on end about the robbery, the same questions over and over again. She ended up going to jail for the credit card and I was released but told to return the next day for further questioning. I did, and was taken to a back room, sat in a corner and had 2 detectives relentlessly question me, picking apart everything I was saying, looking for any circumstantial evidence that could connect me to the crime, and suggesting to me that my girlfriend had robbed the place and I was going down with her if I didn't give them information. Being 19, I had no idea what to do and believed what they were telling me. I didn't question the falsified information they presented to me, and I was brought several times to the brink of giving a confession after being threatened with 10 years upstate if I didn't cooperate. 10 days later, 2 officers showed up at my door and arrested me for armed robbery. My girlfriend was coerced into giving a confession implicating me as an accomplice. I was placed immediately into solitary on 24-hour suicide watch and anxiously waited for a public defender. A week later she showed up and I told her I was totally innocent. She rolled her eyes and said, "Are you kidding me?" I burst into tears, my last hope of release being dashed, and she realized I was telling the truth. She said there's no defense against my girlfriend's confession, and I sank into such a deep depression coupled with shock that I had a psychotic break a few months into my stay. 90 days in solitary at 19 with no hope of proving your innocence will do that. The district attorney made periodic visits to me, offering 2 to 5 year deals for a confession and 10 years if I fought the charges, but I told him I would not admit to something I didn't do. Fast forward to 6 months after my arrest, all spent in solitary. I was woken and driven hurriedly early one morning to the state police barracks, where the DA met with me in a back room and said, "We have determined through further investigation that you were not at the scene of the crime." I was bursting with anger inside and said, "So you'll be releasing me today and dropping all charges, correct?" He got nervous and said, "No. We can't let you go without charges because it would look very bad on us, but I'll tell you what. We'll drop all the charges and give you a charge of interfering with the investigation. You'll be out in less than 6 months." I told him to get my lawyer there. I had a fairly heated exchange, my first real emotions I had felt other than despair in half a year, and agreed. I plead guilty to aiding and abetting the consummation of a crime after the fact and ended up doing 10 months total. A few months after my release, my girlfriend was released and we tried piecing together what happened. Out of nowhere, the mother of the man who planned and committed the robbery found us and told us in person that her son admitted to her that he robbed the place with a close friend of his. He had been fired from the resort 3 days earlier and needed money to support his drug habit. He knew what day would profit most, where the money was, and how to easily get it, as well as how to bypass all form of security. She went to the police and they turned her away, saying they already had the people who did it and they didn't want to hear it. We tried hard to find a lawyer to take our case but were never successful. This DA was later investigated for intimidation and abuse of power in a separate case, and to this day that is my only sense of justice in this situation. My dad was married 2 times before my mom. When he was with his second wife, he would travel a lot for work, which I knew. What I didn't know is that one night he came home to find his wife in bed with another man. Actually walked in on them. He left the room and came back with a gun. Shot the man dead and wounded his wife. He turned himself in immediately and was sent to prison. He was sentenced to 10 years in a maximum security prison. In the last year he was in prison, which was the 4th year, he got out for good behavior, and since the judge ruled it a crime of passion, he met the prison minister. The prison minister was my mom. My dad is a murderer, my mom was the minister. I am the product of a conjugal visit. I met a guy online. We emailed and messaged, this was before texting was a thing, and went out a few times. I liked him but wasn't sure about it. He called me pretty regularly, again, this was pre-texting. One day, no calls. That night I called and left him a message. No return call. I called his work the next day, and he hadn't shown up. I called the police, who did a well-person check at his house but he wasn't there. I wasn't there. The next day the police called me back, they'd found his body. He'd been murdered by one of his neighbors and I had to testify at the trial. Okay, here we go. I had to jerk into a cup to count my soldiers because I had a long-time testicle infection. Sorry, you have to use the children's room, every other room is occupied. So as I enter the room I see Sesame Street books, stuffed animals, colorful walls, and a clock on the wall having animals as numbers. The nurse tells me that there are no porn magazines available and I tried to be funny and said doesn't matter, Ernie and Bert are enough for me to get off. She did not get the joke. Then she asked me if I know how to masturbate and gave me a quick rundown on how to masturbate, all the while looking disgusted and angry. Okay, so there I was, in a children's room in a urology clinic trying to masturbate into a cup while stuffed animals were looking at me with a nurse right in front of the door. I heard her telling the other nurses my fetish about Sesame Street, they all laughed. I had to start over. When I got to the point where I thought that I could fill the cup, the fucking clock on the wall started to moo and make fucking loud cow noises because it was 12 o'clock. I must have sighed very loudly because the whole floor went nuts and started laughing even harder. Start over NR2. When I finally finished and left the room the nurses were still laughing. I've posted this before but here we go again. When we were younger we would play a game where we would throw a pot lid as far as we could into the water and someone would have to fetch it. Basically like playing fetch with your dog. The kid who would win was the one who swam the furthest. One day, a kid threw the lid really far but the other kid was determined to get it. He swam out really far and then bam! The crocodile got him and dragged him underwater. I was declared a divine gift by the monks of St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt. The monastery was built around the alleged burning bush from the Book of Exodus, and since I was really into religions at the time, I asked the monks some questions about the bush and whether they have any other interesting relics in their monastery. The monks went silent and asked me and my family to follow them down to the gates of the burning bush. They let us see the alleged remnants of the burning bush, even though we were not Orthodox Christians. This is a privilege granted only to high officials in the Orthodox Church, and they said we were the first secular people to ever see the bush. After visiting the bush, the monks gave me some kind of a special blessing where they declared me as that divine gift and a silver ring with Greek writing on it. I was a kid at the time so I didn't really react to it in an extravagant way, but my mom was dumbfounded for days, since she is a very religious person. Now at an older age I'm just wondering if they do this every now and then as a prank, or if they actually saw something special in me. Edit, for the people asking, I still have the ring in my childhood home, but I'm sorry that I can't provide pictures because I live pretty far away. I am not a religious person, my agnosticism grows stronger every year. And no, even though I have what some would call an eidetic memory, it doesn't mean that I can remember what happened on a specific date many years ago. It means that I can memorize pictures, texts, and number chains for a long period of time after seeing them once. I'm still shitty in math though. I was in Mexico way past my visa allowance, was only allowed 90 days but was there for about 6 months at the time of this story. I was driving and passed a police car going too far so I got pulled over. I should mention I was also illegally working in Mexico at the time as well and had my uniform and stuff in my trunk. As I'm pulled over and doing the whole license registration thing, the cops asked me for my visa. I told them it was at my house, which was not too far away, and if they would allow me to go get it. At this point I just wanted to be alone for a second so I could make some calls and find out what to do. They asked me if they let me get it would it even be valid. Not wanting to lie and fuck myself over more, I told them no, it was expired, and asked them what now. They started explaining to me that they would have to take me to jail and then deported. At this point I am talking to one officer while the other is searching my car and finds my uniform. They ask me if I'm working in Mexico as well. At this point they're getting angry and start making vague threats about how I will be getting the same treatment Mexicans get when they are in the US working illegally and get caught. At this point I realize they didn't realize my license was a Canadian license and that I was Canadian. I told them this and instantly the situation completely changed. Now they don't care about the visa and are asking me tons of questions about Canada. Is it cold all year? Do bears wander the streets of Toronto, etc.? We talked for quite a while and they seemed really interested in Canada and were really friendly with me when they realized I wasn't American. So when I calmed down a bit after talking with them, I figured might as well ask again what they want to do about the visa situation. They seemed apologetic and said unfortunately they already called it in, so they have to bring me to the station. As I am ready to start going with them, they hear the radio in their cruiser, so one goes to answer it. He comes running back to my car and tells me to quickly get in my car and follow them down the road and don't even think about trying to get away from them. At this point I have no idea what the fuck is going on, but I just do what he says and get in my car and follow them as they start speeding away, 100 plus in a 60. About 2 minutes down the road a car bomb had gone off near a restaurant and injured, maybe killed, I never found out, of a bunch of people. We pull up to the smoldering car and the cops get out and tell me to wait in my car. As I wait in my car they go and do their cop thing. After about 20 minutes, one of the officers comes up to my car, hands me my license, tells me to go home and not get caught again and get back to Canada ASAP. I stayed in Mexico another 8 months before I went back. My cousin and I, both males, were about 12 years old, and as most 12-year-old boys like to do, we were climbing things. We decided to climb onto the roof of a house and everything went smooth. We got up and hung out and talked about how awesome we were for conquering this mountain of a house. Well, we go to get down and we have to drop down and hang and get our feet on a railing on the back porch. My cousin goes first and he gets down no problem, exactly as planned, so I was feeling confident as ever. I scoot to the side of the house and grab the roof and drop down to hang. Well, my grip wasn't what I thought it was and I lost hold of the house and just like in the movies landed with one leg on each side of the rail. I just rolled off to my right so that I would land on the deck and could cry in the fetal position, but I didn't realize the grill was right there, so I hit my head on the grill on the way down. I had to go to the hospital because my sack was black and blue and a nice young nurse got to scan my balls to make sure there was no serious damage. Luckily there were no lasting effects and I can look back on it and laugh now. I accidentally abducted a baby deer. So I was enjoying a nice spring day and decided to go for a run. After 5 to 6 miles, I'm getting close to my house and slow down for a cool down. As I turn down my road, I hear a noise behind me and see a baby fawn following me. As soon as I stop and turn around, the fawn looks around and starts wobbling away from me. And I mean wobbling, this thing was young enough that it was having trouble walking steady. So I turn back around and start running home again, and the fawn follows, chasing me down the road. I stop, same thing. Repeat this 3 to 4 more times before I realized I had taken off my white shirt and tucked it into the back of my shorts when I was running, and the fawn saw the bouncing flash of white and instinctively followed it, but got confused as soon as we would stop and he realized that there were no other deer around. So I turned around and led him back down the road to where I first saw him. I saw a doe standing back in the trees, so I took my shirt out and shooed the fawn back into the trees. V had numerous wild creatures come up to me at random times, with absolutely zero fear. In college, I was walking through the woods that stretched between my dorm and the football field, where I parked my car. There was this clearing that overlooked the field, and the track team was practicing. My roommate was a vaulter, so I stopped to watch for a little bit, and leaned up against a tree. I had an apple in my purse, and eventually I felt this little nudge. A fawn had come up and was nosing my bag. I stood stock still and just let it sniff me, and saw Mama Deer was a few feet away. Very slowly, I reached into my bag, and baby bounded away. I took the apple and set it on the ground, and walked away really slowly. Later that afternoon, I was cutting through the woods again, and the apple was still there, but with bites out of it. I've also been hiking and had squirrels and bunnies come up to me with no issue. Birds will land near me and not fly away. It's pretty awesome, but because it will only happen when I'm alone, I don't tell anyone. It's like my own little secret that I may actually be Snow White. I met a guy online. Fell in love. We were a couple for 5 or so months, began to make plans to meet. Before that could happen, his sister was killed in a car accident. Meeting plans were put on hold. He started to pull away. I went to Baton Rouge with the Red Cross after Hurricane Katrina. While there, I found out I was being catfished. I then revenge fucked another guy I knew from online for a couple days. He turned out to be a top-notch douche. I went home and called my catfisher. There was no car accident, his sister was alive, and it was basically a panicked attempt to delay meeting. I ended up eventually forgiving him. I flew across the country, met him, and fell in love in person. I moved out there a couple months later. Everything was amazing, we were so happy. For a year. Then he moved for his job, and despite his protests, I loved where we lived and had a great job, followed him. 3 weeks later he came to my apartment after work one day. He broke down in tears, and told me he was getting married that weekend in an arranged marriage. 36 hours later I watched him get on a plane and haven't seen him since. Tomorrow is his 7th wedding anniversary. Hitchhiked across the country multiple times between ages 15 to 22. I have climbed mountains and watched the northern lights. I've slept outside in -20°C, I've taken planes, trains, buses, and boats. I was so hungry one time that I stole a jack-o'-lantern off someone's porch and ate it. I stood in line for almost 2 days to see Star Wars 1, and I hated it so much I walked out halfway through the movie. I've been banned from entering the USA for at least 10 years. There's so much more, and if I had the skill I would write a book. Now at 31 years old, I have a nice little family and I'm actually pretty boring. LOL. My high school boyfriend died a day before I turned 18. The day I was going to pack up my stuff, we were going to elope and run away to North Dakota. He worked there and had been living there for 2 months at this point. He was older, handsome, ex-military, and I adored him. He called me from the road and we exchanged the following words before he passed me: I love you, I look forward to seeing you tonight. You mean the world to me, you are my everything. Him: I love you, too. I'd die a happy man if those words were the last words I ever heard. His phone record showed that was the last conversation he had on his phone. He was hit by a drunk driver less than 5 minutes later. My biological father is a drug dealer, specifically cocaine. My mother was a client of his and started sleeping with him in exchange for drugs. She got pregnant and tried to have an abortion, but it failed. That's where I came into the picture. My father decided that he should rape me repeatedly from around ages 4 to 6. He then got the great idea to sell me to other men to be in a child prostitution and pornography ring. I was videoed being raped and tortured, and those videos were sold. I was never sent to kindergarten. Child Protective Services realized something was horribly wrong when I was 7 and I was sent to live with my grandparents. In the process of the transfer from my mom to extended family, I was kidnapped. I was taken across the country and hidden in an attic for about a week before I was found. My uncle hired a private detective who was able to track me down and find me. There were multiple Amber Alerts sent out for me as well. My extended family did not even know I existed until CPS and the police contacted them. When I was finally found, they realized that at age 7, I weighed 38 pounds and was significantly malnourished. I had some severe developmental delays, like not being able to read or tie my shoes. I had actually never used silverware before and did not know what a fork was. I was essentially a child that never existed until then. There was quite the lengthy court battle that followed, and I was sent to live with my grandparents, who I had never seen before in my life. Things improved from there and I lived with them until I was 15. Now, I live with my uncle and his husband, and they have legally adopted me at age 18. Now, I am a healthy, happy teenager who is a pre-med major and a vet tech. I wasn't supposed to make it, but I did. No one believes how crazy my life was because of how normal I am now. Edit. Forgot to mention that my mom was doing meth, cocaine, heavily drinking, and smoking while pregnant with me. It's great to not be mentally damaged from that. I used to live in Southwest Florida and I loved to go fishing. I always went to this one pier that extended about 100 yards into the bay near my house. There were some people there fishing as well. They were there when I arrived. Through conversation while we watched our lines, I learned they had lost an unintended rod over the railing earlier. So there I am casting for I think it was the third time, reeled in a bit, and that's when I felt something tug. Thinking I just made the fastest catch ever, I brought it in and shit was it hard. I thought my line was going to snap for sure. It didn't though, and when I brought that missing fishing pole out of the water I nearly pissed myself. I was laughing so hard. So I get it up to the pier. The other people fishing are thanking me and laughing when I realize there's still tension on the line of the pole I pulled out of the ocean. So, naturally, I start reeling. This was different from before. There was something alive on the end of it, no doubt. So, yet again, I reel and I shit you not, I pull a 2 feet wide stingray out of the water. Nobody will believe me even when I showed them the picture of the stingray on the pier, and it seriously pisses me off. I caught a fishing pole and a stingray at the same time while fishing. When I was 4, 1992 to 1993, my mom, dad, sister, brother, and I were on our way back from South Dakota. We couldn't find a hotel the night before, so we slept in our Aerostar minivan. My parents did not get a ton of sleep because of this, and so the next day my mom was driving on the interstate and began to fall asleep at the wheel. She crossed over the rumble strips to the left of the road, woke up and overcompensated to the right, and the minivan turned sideways and began to flip and roll at 65 miles per hour. Right before this happened, my siblings and I had gotten permission to switch seats so my dad could read to me from the passenger seat while I sat in the middle row behind him, and we had all not yet buckled up again. During the flipping and rolling, the back seat ended up flying out the back of the van somehow, with my brother and sister going with it. I remember things leading up to this but don't remember anything during the crash. Apparently, I somehow fell into my dad's lap in the front passenger seat where he held me until the van came to a stop. The van stopped upside down on the road. Both my parents were still buckled in and my dad was holding me while he was upside down. He unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the van and left me with a woman that had stopped to help. He then went back to the van to get my mom, who was still buckled in. She is paraplegic, so she needed help out. He looked for my brother and sister while helping her, but they were nowhere to be found. He got my mom out of the van and was helping her off the road when she looked around and didn't see my brother or sister. She began to freak out and ask, "Where are they?" At that moment my dad looked down the road to see my brother and sister walking towards us. They had landed on the side of the road. My brother had just a scrape on his nose and some bruises as he landed in the grass. My sister was not so lucky. She landed on the road and got some major road rash on her arm and shoulder. She was also apparently the one to go through the glass, as she had lots of glass in her wounds. My mom, my dad, and I escaped with some minor scrapes and bruises. We were all rushed to the hospital and everyone turned out okay. My sister got the worst of it and I can still remember her screaming as they pulled the glass out of her wounds. She also had to have surgery on her arm as a few tendons in her wrist were torn. Overall, we were all extremely lucky to survive. We speculate that if my brother and sister had been in their seatbelts it may have actually been worse, since they would have been strapped to the rear seat that went flying out the back. I've told this story to friends and had to have my parents confirm it and have my sister show them the scars to get them to believe me. Edit. A few people have asked how my mom can drive. As I said below, there's varying degrees of paraplegic. She has very limited use of her legs, but it's enough to drive. She is also able to walk slowly using a crutch. Didn't happen to me, but to my grandmother. About 25 years ago, my grandma wanted to immigrate to America from Thailand. In order to speed up the process of getting a green card, she needed to marry an American. At the time, she was divorced and spoke really bad English, but she had a friend hook her up with some American white guy who was closeted gay and actually had a secret boyfriend. She paid him an initial sum of money and they got fake married. They went through the process and finally, my grandma got a green card. It was at this time that she was supposed to pay him the rest of his fee, but a few days after she got her citizenship, her fake husband gets stabbed to death out of nowhere by some guy. Immediately, the police contact my grandma to inform her of her husband's death, and told her that she should probably call her in-laws and inform them. My grandma then had to call this guy's parents, who didn't even know she existed, and tell them that their son married some random Thai lady and that he's dead. My grandma's been living in the US ever since, and she never got to pay him the rest of his money. My grandmother was murdered by my grandfather when my mom was a little girl. It was never proven, but we know it. Backstory available if anyone is interested. Side note: the house she died in was also supposedly haunted, a couple of stories there too. Edit: sorry I took so long to reply, guys. I have a 16-month-old, so my computer time is quite limited, ha. Okay, story time. When my mother was 11, she was at home with my nurse grandmother and abusive grandfather. My mom had a pretty tough childhood, and still wet the bed every night. She had 2 older siblings, but they were all moved out and stuff. Anyway, my grandmother was a nurse, as I said before. She gave herself a vitamin shot every day. She just administered it to herself, no big deal. She had been doing this as long as my mother can remember. Well, on this particular night, there was a lot of fighting. Threats, crying, physical violence, the whole 9 yards. As my mother is going to bed, her father stops her and offers her a glass of Coke. Of course she says yes, without wondering why an adult would offer a notorious bedwetter a drink at bedtime. The next morning my mother wakes up to her 22-year-old sister shaking her and screaming for her to wake up. My mom woke up but said she felt dizzy and sick. She didn't quite understand why her sister was there and why she was screaming. Apparently, the night before, about an hour after my mother went to bed, my grandmother gave herself a fatal overdose of insulin. She only kept the insulin in case of emergency for my uncle. My aunt saw the body and said she had bruises and the injection spot had multiple pricks. This was back in the 70s, and after telling the police his wife was a heavy drinker and suicidal, they dropped the case. After my grandmother's death, my grandfather literally just packed up and left. Without his 11-year-old daughter. My mom ended up growing up in group homes and has some terrible stories from her youth. She actually ended up turning into an alcoholic to reclaim her youth, and that killed her 2 years ago on her 46th birthday. Nobody in my family has spoken to him since the 70s. He may have approached my mother in the 90s, she wasn't sure, but he took off after making a racial slur about her biracial children. Even if he was around, he would not be in my life. Okay then, ghost story time. The first one was right after my grandmother died, in the same house. My aunt moved in after my grandfather left to try to take care of my mother. It didn't work out, but that's beside the point. Anyway, my mom gets home from school one day and my aunt is sitting on the driveway, pale and shaking. My mom asked what was wrong and she said she refused to go in. She said she heard something weird in their mother's room. They didn't really go in there. Grandma liked her personal space in life, out of habit, except to occasionally clean. So, my mother approached the door, wondering why her sister was being an idiot. As soon as she touched the doorknob, the entire door shook like someone slammed into it. This was accompanied by an almost comical roar. My mom immediately opened the door because she didn't believe it was anything but an idiot dog. Not a thing in the room, and nothing was out of place. My mom said she was more curious to its origins than scared. Same house, same time frame. My mother was in her own bedroom, doing whatever by the window. She happens to glance out her window at her mother's. Their windows faced each other over the backyard patio. She just sees the heavy velvet drapes in the room swishing back and forth really hard, like someone was swinging them. She ran to her mother's room, and the curtains weren't even fluttering. This last thing I'm not sure how factual it is. I've never actually researched it, but it's common knowledge in my family. After my mother moved out of the house into a group home, the house was sold to a newlywed couple. A few months after they moved in, the dude went nuts and chopped his wife into multiple pieces. He then dumped those pieces in the mountains and tried to pretend she never existed. My family likes to use this as proof that something evil was in the house. Holy wall of text. Sorry about the horrendous writing, I hope I got my point across okay. I am not who I am. Back in 1990s I walked out of a hospital with another patient's identity and have been living as that person ever since. At that time I already did not have any next of kin and no, I do not know whatever happened to the person I took documents from. I have been living in a different country and I had been issued passports in the name of that person twice already. I had submitted my biometric data and as I had no problem obtaining the passports I assume that my identity donor is most probably dead and gone. I am not a criminal and I am a sort of wealthy expat businessman here with a permanent residence permit. I had never been to my homeland since and am working on obtaining citizenship here. I work in a lumberyard that sells pretty much everything one needs to build a house. We also deliver on pickup trucks, dump trucks, and teledyne, forklift, trucks. One day, I was delivering a bunch of plywood and siding in a pickup to a new house being built in an already developed neighborhood. I get to the house, unstrap everything, and start pulling siding off the truck and into the garage. I got 1 or 2 sheets off when I noticed some people congregating around the truck. I thought it was odd, but I just figured I'd keep unloading and just get the job done. I got a few more sheets off, then noticed about 15 people standing around the truck. I stopped what I was doing and just stared. I wondered if I was about to get jumped. I pulled out my phone to call my boss and have him send someone out to help me or take me to the hospital if things got ugly, but then I noticed exactly who these people were. They were just neighbors. Old folks, grandkids, parents. Just people from around the neighborhood checking out what was going on. I shrugged it off as being a boring neighborhood and went back to work. All of a sudden, I heard these folks chanting, "Lumberyard guy! Lumberyard guy!" They were cheering me on. In a daze, I unloaded the rest of the siding and plywood to much applause, got into the pickup, and drove back to the store. My boss thought I was full of shit upon hearing this story, as did all of my friends. It was surreal. This story is weird because not only do others not believe it, besides the witnesses, but I hardly believe it either, and I'm the one who did all these things. Anyway, here goes. 20 years old. Go to Cuba with 3 girlfriends, I'm a guy. Obviously, I want to get my drink on as they say, so the first thing I do is start drinking excessively. There's a bar in the pool, so swim up, drink, swim around, swim up, drink, swim around, and so on. I get pretty blackout hammered on the first day and wake up groggy the next morning. This is where it gets interesting and funny and I don't remember shit. As I walk down to the pool buffet area the next morning, I get a round of applause. I'm confused. Very confused. Staff are, not to toot my own horn, basically calling me a hero. I'm really confused. I find my friends who are already eating and I'm about to ask them what's up when one of them jumps up and hugs me kind of teary-eyed. And again, I'm confused. So I ask them what the fuck is going on. This is what they tell me. The previous evening, the girl who hugged me was semi-drunk and fell in the pool after dark. The lifeguard was already off duty but I was apparently hanging around, others too, but they didn't really realize what was happening because they weren't paying attention to her. Since she was semi-drunk and is a notoriously poor swimmer, she started sinking. After about a minute, she claimed she was in there at least a minute before passing out. I jump in and pull her out. I gave her CPR and everything. DR saved my friend from drowning while drunk, don't remember it. Side note, we also had sex on a subsequent night, but I only have very fuzzy memories of it, also due to inebriation. After my divorce, my ex moved 3 hours away with our sons, and over the next year, the boys would spend 2 weeks with me, 2 weeks with her and so on. I was living in a beach town, so they spent virtually every afternoon they were with me in the water. My younger son was about 2.5 and was utterly fearless about charging directly into the waves. He was always so easily bowled over and knocked around, and my stress levels were high watching him. They were at their mom's one night. It had been about 10 days since I'd seen them, and I had an absolutely terrifying nightmare about my younger son running into the waves and getting pulled out to sea. I was trying frantically to reach him, but people were holding me back, telling me, "He's gone, you will drown too." I shot up out of bed, practically hyperventilating. It was so real. Moments later, my phone lit up with a text message, which was strange considering it was about 3 a.m. I looked at it, and it was the boy's mom saying, "Damnedest thing just happened. Your son just sat up in bed and threw up a bunch of water. He seems fine now. My uncle died in Egypt because he was eaten by a crocodile in the Nile while he was there doing voluntary work as a doctor. A cousin of my grandmother was paralyzed and could suddenly walk at the age of 22. The same month he finished revalidation, he went to work on the field and got stuck with his pants in the tractor and was totally powdered. My great-great-grandfather, also doctor, died in prison because they left him to die because he helped a Nazi survive. The cousin of my grandfather died during the World War II because there was an internal conflict between the Flemish and Walloons in Belgium. A Walloon threw a grenade and my grandfather's cousin saved his friends by lying on it. P.S. Not sure about all the relatives. It could have been an uncle of my grandfather, I'm not sure, but the stories are 100% true. I was camping. We had unpacked all of our stuff and had just finished setting everything up. We had put the bag of snacks, chips, granola bars, etc., on the picnic table. While we weren't paying attention, some raccoons jumped up on the table and stole the whole bag of our snacks. Oh well. So later on in the night we were all drinking and chilling out by the campfire. You could say we were drunk. It was also getting pretty dark. We hear rustling sounds coming from the picnic table behind us, where our cooler was. I grabbed my flashlight and started rushing over the picnic table to confront the raccoon. I didn't turn on the flashlight because I wanted to surprise it. So, I'm rushing the picnic table and I point the flashlight and turn it on. It was not a raccoon. It was a bear. Standing on his hind legs, he had opened our cooler and was digging through it. He looks at me and goes back into the cooler and grabs our pack of hamburgers and starts to run off. I did the most logical thing that came to my drunken self and chased after the bear, yelling, "Give me back our hamburgers." I think I took him by surprise because he dropped the hamburgers and ran off into the forest. We ate those hamburgers the next day. They tasted like victory. So that's my story. No one believes me when I tell it, but my wife and 2 of my friends were there and saw everything. Drunkenly chased down a bear and reclaimed our hamburgers. When I was in the 3rd grade, my appendix ruptured, putting me in the hospital for a long period of time. This was at the time when Beanie Babies were at their peak, and I was obsessed with collecting them. One day as I was lying in the hospital bed watching television, I hear a knock at the door and 3 nuns from the local Catholic diocese walk in. It was Valentine's Day and they were visiting the sick children. They start talking to me, asking me how I am feeling, etc. This is when I notice that one of the nuns has a basket full of Beanie Babies that they had been giving out to the children. I asked about them and was told that they had the entire basket to give away, but there were few children on the ward. I asked if I could have them. The nuns agreed that I could have the Beanie Babies, but first I had to convert to Catholicism. I did it. Right at the moment I got the Beanie Babies, my parents walked into the room and saw me, 3 nuns, and a basket full of Beanie Babies praying for my soul. I converted religions for a basket full of Beanie Babies. I grew up in a bit of a messed up family, had basically no interaction with my father. My mother was married to my stepfather, who was an alcoholic. My mother was codependent and she got really crazy when she was drinking. And she would throw me out of the house. So, when I was 12 this happened again. I ended up hanging around at the train station, just having no clue where to go, what to do. This is where this guy picks me up. I am 12, I had no clue. I was just really upset and I actually followed this guy to his hotel room. He is like 30. And here comes the amazing part, he just bought me dinner, did not touch me at all, takes me around the next day and disappeared from my life after this. I then went back home, because where would I go? To this day I cannot believe how lucky I was. And I realized this quickly afterwards. It made me realize that good things can happen to me. It pushed me to work really hard in school, because I would only have a place to go if I earned it myself, and education helps, and it made me appreciate people a lot more. Today I have a PhD, a good job, live in a lovely place. I am only missing a boyfriend and a cat. I saw a UFO. I am a pilot, and I have no clue what it was. I don't think it was aliens, but I reported it to MUFON anyway. Edit. Here is the story. My friend and I are driving along a country road in his van after a late-night McDonald's run. I see a flashing, a pulsating grouping of white lights about a quarter-mile ahead at around 300 AGL, pure estimation. I tell him to pull over, and we just kind of watch it. Each light was about as bright as a landing light, and they were arranged in a triangle. When we stopped, I realized it was moving toward us at around 15 to 20 knots, again, just my best guess. It passed over us, and continued south-southeast. We were facing north. If it had been a helicopter moving that low and slow, we surely would have heard at least something. I could tell that there was something between the lights, but I couldn't make out any features. We were about 20 nm from a Class D airport with few cargo flights, and about 2 miles from a tiny grass strip. The only simple explanation I can come up with is a large black balloon covered in lights, being towed or propelled somehow. I don't know of anything that would look like that, but I am keeping an open mind to any possibilities. I've posted this before, but once at a friend's house on a somewhat cloudy day, I got caught in a conversation about astrological symbols. Everyone there was going on about how their symbol was the greatest, and I quickly found myself ostracized as I was the only Aries of the group. Being somewhat drunk and tired of them going on about what I thought was nonsense, I decided to jump on a chair facing the group and shouted in my most powerful war voice, "You think you are all so great? I am an Aries. Our element is fire. We are beholders of its pure raw energy. We are the bringers of light." As I shouted the final word, I threw my hands into the sky and was joined by a strike of lightning not a mile away from us, directly behind me in everyone's field of view. Jaws hit the floor, and after a minute of silence my friend muttered, "Welp, we can't argue with that. Old friend put a gun to my head once because I'd disrespected him. I'm bipolar, and at this time I was on a pretty good up. That's important because otherwise I don't think I'd have done what I did. I disarmed him. Knocked the gun up, around, I don't fucking know, seen too many films. Took the gun though. He promptly shits himself, apologizes, backing off, fear in his eyes. I walk away, hand the gun to a mutual friend outside the house and leave without a word. I can't imagine how confusing that must have been without an explanation, but that was it for me. You hang around with the wrong crowd for long enough, you realize you don't want to be like them. Was raised by my adoptive mother and my biological mother's ex-husband. So just before I was born, a man named Randy and a woman named Stacy got together and had 2 kids, my 2 half-sisters. Then Randy left the picture because meth. Then Stacy got with Greg, my dad, and had me and my full-blood brother. Then Stacy left the picture because meth. Then Greg got with Michelle and they had my half-brother. Then Greg left the picture because meth. Then Michelle decided to adopt me and my half-brother. Then Michelle gets a call asking if she can house Randy from way back because he's getting out of jail and needs a home. So he moves in and Michelle and Randy pump out my little sister, who technically isn't related to me at all. So my household was Randy, biological mother's ex-husband. Michelle, the woman who adopted me. 1 full-blood brother, 1 half-blood brother, and my sister. My story is kind of long and I've been told I am making it up for attention multiple times because it's so unbelievable, so here it is. In year 6, grade 5 to 6 for you Americans, our school got a replacement principal who was a complete bitch. She didn't believe in mental illness and thoroughly bullied me because I have selective mutism. Other girls in my class started bullying me too. I started taking whole weeks off from school just to avoid it. The bitch, as I shall call her. locked me dark closets knowing I was afraid of the dark, and decided that because I avoided school I had to come to their morning club, which started at 5 a.m. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. and be taken there every day until I had behaved. It must have lasted for at least 2 to 4 months. I started comfort eating. I went from 90 pounds at 5 feet 2 inch to 180 pounds. Furthering the bullying because she hated fat lazy slobs. I failed my exams, not that they matter in primary school. And I skipped the last day of school. I thought I had finally gotten away from this shit, but nope. In secondary school the bitch had told them I was a troublemaker and told them I shouldn't be placed with anyone from my school, so in my class I was placed with complete strangers and I couldn't make any friends. My previous friends abandoned me, which was the worst feeling in the world. Then the incident happened. I hated gym. I mean, I had suddenly become 180 pounds. I was very uncomfortable in my new body, so every week I skipped Tuesdays because that was gym. Well, one week my mom had enough of my shit and wrote me a doctor's note saying I couldn't participate. She also convinced me not to take my gym bag because why carry around an extra 2 kilograms? Our bags were fucking heavy. So I go to gym class and another person with a broken arm hands in her note at the same time as me. There was 2 gym teachers. So they leave and come back and tell the girl with the broken arm, "You are okay," then look at me and lose their fucking minds. "Where is your gym kit? Where is it?" I don't take kindly to being fucking yelled at. I instantly couldn't talk anymore, thanks selective mutism, which only pissed her off more. Everyone in the changing room was looking at me. Later that comes into play. She then takes me out of the changing room and yells at me for a further 10 minutes while I try not to cry. Eventually she gives up and forces me to put on some old muddy clothes that didn't fit me. She even threw another fit because the size 5 shoes weren't going to fit my fucking feet. They left me alone while I changed and I burst into tears and tried to call my mom, not like she could do anything, but whatever. Unfortunately they came back and interrupted the call. When we got to the gym hall they made me run around in a circle while everyone laughed at me. Then we had to pair up, so I tried going to my old best friend. She just fucking ignored me. Like I was a ghost. My feelings were even my hurt. No one wanted to pair with me because I was crying and Jesus. I never went back after that day. The teacher lied and said I had a choice and she paid the fucking witnesses not to say anything. My school also called social services because they were convinced my mom had killed me and buried me in the back garden. What the fuck? Now I was homeschooled for 4 years. In reality I was left home alone all day and I played online games and shit. I never left the house for those 4 years, so everyone really did think I was dead. Last year I went to college to get my secondary education. I get the results on the 21st of August. I've also lost 50 to 60 pounds of the weight I gained. 10 years ago I locked my keys and wallet in the car with the engine on about an hour's drive from where I lived. It was at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. I called my wife from the station but she couldn't get me because we had a newborn in the house and a 2-year-old. I had nobody else to call. I was sitting on the ground next to my car when a man drove up and parked right next to me, which was very strange because I was parked next to a phone booth and not near the gas pump. I am very shy and never talk to anyone, but the guy got out of his car and started yakking away with me. He looked weird, so I told him I wasn't in a great mood, my keys were locked in my car and that he should move on unless he had a coat hanger. He said he didn't have one but kept talking. At one point he said that I had a nice car, which is very odd because I had a 10-year-old Ford Escort. He said his wife had the same car and then a light went off in his head. He checked to see if he had his wife's keys. He did. He said, "Let me try your lock because sometimes the keys work on cars of the same model." He put the key in my lock, opened my door and I was set. I'm still not sure why he parked next to me because he wasn't there to get gas and he just drove off. When I was 19 I traveled to China for study abroad and was told to leave because my visa was revoked due to SARS. I, not understanding either visas or influenza, decided to stay and it was awesome. For 8 weeks, I walked from village to village in the foothills of the Himalayas, on the edge of Tibet and at the border of Burma, in places so remote that most of people there had never seen foreigners before. I traveled with a few other college students as young and naive as I. I slept in chicken coops and schoolhouses and abandoned sheds. I hitchhiked and slaughtered a goat and a chicken to eat. We saw people who had never worn shoes and had capes made of bark. I walked across a gorge at least 100 feet above a raging river on a bridge made of vines. I ate fish heads and rice. We went to this one river valley that had only had a road to it built the year before. We were supposed to hike out of the valley across this mountain pass, but the pass was blocked from snow, so we had to come back the way we came, but the only road out was impassable because they had exploded the one tunnel through the mountain. So we hitchhiked up to the tunnel entrance and then we'd led the construction crew to let us through. On the other side, the Chinese construction camp made us their guests and we played guitar together and sang songs, although we only knew Baby Got Back, and then I slept in a toolbox that had been converted into a bed. Once when I was 19, I had an adventure, and it was all I had ever hoped it would be. And, for the rest of my life, I always have that. I have been blessed by a Ukrainian princess that was supposedly put into protective services sometime in the 80s and shipped to the middle of nowhere, Southern Oregon. While she could be just a crazy old blind lady, she did have an extreme amount of money, like God was on her payroll rich, and she did speak perfect Ukrainian. I met her cause my dad was driving taxi and she would ask to always be taking to the hair salon. She lived like 50 miles from any salon. And would pay very, very well for the trip weekly. My dad had picked me up to give me a ride and got the call to get her and took me along with him. Along the way he told about the princess thing and it was all secret hush-hush type stuff. When I met her I took her hand and kissed it. I was like 16 and thought it was the proper thing to do. Well, it apparently made her extremely happy because no one had done this for her in years, and she proceeded to grab my hands and started chanting and singing in Ukrainian. Then after she finished she started crying, tears of joy, and said it was a blessing that royalty gave to visitors and people of the land. So whether she really was a princess or not, it's still a really cool story. Nobody believes me because it sounds so far-fetched and I'm not entirely sure myself. Snuck into an abandoned middle school to airsoft with about 15 friends. We are about to start and we hear a whirring noise in the distance. We see a police helicopter flying towards us with the spotlight on. We don't think anything of it until we see a bunch of flashlights beaming over the brick wall we were standing around. Suddenly, the noise of many people climbing the chain-link fence into the school rings out and we all go into panic mode. Picture 18 or so 18-year-olds running for their lives away from at least 24 cops. Every single one of us escaped. 2 guys literally walked away and when stopped by cops claimed that they were walking to our local synagogue to worship. Cops let them go. Turns out some guy walking his dog called 911 and thought there was a gang war happening in our little suburban California town. 12 cop cars and a helicopter later, an epic story was born. One of the first few times I got drunk, I woke up in the middle of an empty field late at night and tried to sit up. For some reason I couldn't. I felt something connected to my head. I realized my hair was stuck to something, and when I reached back, I found that all the hair on my entire head was braided into the hair of another girl who I barely knew. I had to whack her in the face, wake her up, awkwardly explain what had happened, and we had to unbraid ourselves and go home. I never found out who did that to us. I snuck into a huge concert in New York City featuring 2 of the world's biggest rock bands that year by hiding behind an amp and running into the roadie entrance. I ended up seeing the Black Keys and the Foo Fighters for free from the front row, standing next to several celebrities, while no one noticed I didn't have a VIP pass. One weekend my parents left me and 2 friends alone in our house, reasoning that their parents would be home. Theirs did the same, leaving us with 2 houses and no parents. They also left $100 for us to get groceries for a week. Instead we bought 2 inflatable boats and attempted to row them through an isolated bay to another friend's house. We used plastic shovels as oars, and unfortunately a lightning storm struck in the middle of this venture, making it extremely unsafe. We were too far out in the water to turn back, so we were forced to go all the way there, and somehow made it despite the current being against us, and docked at the friend's dock, meant for actual boats, not inflatable children's rafts. Later we found out the storm was a side effect of a major hurricane happening down the coast. When I was a little kid, I for some reason liked reading books by Oliver Sacks, the neurologist. I was kind of a nerd. I went to the library and asked if they had anything by him. The librarian started to say, "No, we don't, but you're interrupting this man in front of you." He turned around and said I was only here to drop off this bag full of books all by Oliver Sacks, and gave them to me. That might not sound that weird, but think about how bizarrely unlikely it is. Woke up with hair braided to someone else's, snuck into front row at a world-televised rock concert, rode inflatable boats through major storm, went to the library to ask for books by a specific author and ended up in line behind a guy who was there to drop off a huge bag of books by exactly that author. 2 weeks after my 27th birthday, I almost died. I was at work and it felt like I was having a little bit of heartburn. Also the side of my jaw starting hurting, which was a bit odd. I was rubbing my jaw and swallowed, and all of a sudden there was a pop feeling by my heart and it felt like each beat was lava, hurt so bad. I went into the bathroom to catch my breath and it was just getting worse. I couldn't stop writhing around from the pain. I called a friend who took me to the ER. They did a chest x-ray and say I didn't have a heart attack. Did not do anything further despite my obvious pain. Doctor told me he wasn't sure what was wrong and sent me home. I was completely out of it and didn't have the mindset to argue it. I went home and got really sick, like every 10 minutes I was in the bathroom. Had no clue what was going on. Was not getting any sleep or recovering, so I decided after a couple days to go back to the ER. Turns out my oxygen level was down to 48%. That got the doctor's attention. I was so weak and sick I had aspirated in my lungs, giving myself pneumonia as well. Decided to give me a CT scan to find out about the pneumonia, and found out my aorta had an aneurysm that was leaking, hence the pain and suffering. Was life flighting to a more competent hospital. They were telling my mom to call family because I probably wouldn't make it. To make matters worse, there was a huge storm that we had to fly through, and apparently it was so bumpy they couldn't tell if I had a pulse. Freaking my mom out. Due to the distance, they were nice enough to let her come along. Turns out my type of heart problem is common in males over the age of 60, not a healthy, active 27-year-old female. What is funny is I was telling people on my birthday that 27 felt old to me, like you are past the age where it's cute to goof off and need to consider life, career and such. My friends tease me about the old comments, but I showed them. Winky face. Okay, I grew up with crazy abusive parents. It was so bad I'm lucky I had both, so that there was one there to stop the other before they actually killed me. Anything more than pancakes for dinner was a luxury. I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 10, that sucked. A few years later I was drinking very heavily and skipping more school than actually attending. One day I decided I want more from life than what I could get while living there. I left when I was 16 and moved 300 miles away to where I knew no one, so I could put my life on track. I stopped drinking, had no friends, so it's not like I could party. I worked for a year, then I enrolled and graduated high school. After that I moved with a boy across the country when I was 19, 3 years into the relationship. Broke up with him soon after, married his co-worker 3 years later. That marriage did not last long. We were best friends who made the mistake of thinking it was more. We are still close friends. Tuesdays we go for lunch and Wednesday evenings he comes over to play video games. After the marriage ended I went to college. Now I live with my boyfriend of 4 years. My family is still crazy, so I really limit my contact with them. Example, currently my mom and sisters have a restraining order against my father who went crazy 3 years ago. I don't need one because I'm in another province. My mom hosts BBQs for family and friends but has to go pick up my middle sister's kids because my sister had an affair and broke up the marriage of my mom's roommate. I do talk to my mom about once a week. It is really hard for me. She always tries to bring up my dad and play victim. It pisses me off. There were times he had me on the floor kicking my ribs in and you did nothing. He never laid a hand on her. He called you and said he wanted to kill you? Boo fucking who? I have a great job, overpaid by about 12 grand a year, which is nice. No children, I will always live a child-free life. My boyfriend now is fantastic. He really put me back together. I didn't know how a broken I was until I met him. It took a long time to get out of the habit of flinching when he reached for me. It was just an instinct from being raised the way I was. That's basically my life thus far. It's not exactly over the top, but it's such a lovely and bittersweet story for me, and it inspired me to write a screenplay based on it. One night last year, after a tumultuous breakup, me and my ex met up to discuss things and try to make peace. She was very angry with me, and I was very irrational and upset. We met at the beach, and after around half an hour, we began to friendly up to each other. We ended up spending 14 hours together that night, walking around, talking about life and how we fucked it up, watching the tide at 3 a.m. and sitting in a harbor master whilst discussing everything, running away from bars trying to dodge friends so they don't see us together, they'd be so confused. At some point in the night, we decided that we would stay up to watch the sunrise. We spent so long in our relationship making promises and never keeping them, so we figured we'd at least fulfill one of them. It was tough. We both almost fell asleep at one point in a supermarket on one of those chairs you sit on to try on shoes, but we cracked the night open wide and watched the sunrise. I feel now as if we chased that sunrise because we were holding on to each other, unable to truly let each other go, but knowing this would be the last time. We never kissed or had sex that night, but we held hands, and we connected perhaps more than we ever did during our relationship. Walking away from her in the morning knowing it was the end was the hardest thing I've done. I wrote a screenplay about the night called Chasing Promises, and I hope in a few years to be able to make it. It really was a special night. We don't talk anymore, and as far as I know, we aren't on good standings, but I hold on to that night, and somewhere, somehow, I hope she does too. Or am I still just chasing those promises? The thing that gets me the most is that, when we first met up, she said to me, "I can't stay long, so say what you have to say." If anyone would care to read that screenplay, 95 pages, I'll post it here. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. I'm 26, my boyfriend is 28, and we've been together for a little over 2 years. We met through mutual friends, moved in together after about a year, and for the most part, our relationship has been stable and calm. No huge fights, no dramatic breakups, just two people trying to build something normal. What he didn't know, and what I never planned on telling him, was that I have an OnlyFans account. I started it about 8 months ago. Not because I wanted attention or validation, but because I was struggling financially. Rent went up, groceries got more expensive, and my regular job just wasn't cutting it anymore. A friend casually mentioned that she was making decent money online, and after weeks of thinking about it, I tried it myself. I didn't see it as a big deal at first. It felt distant, almost anonymous. A username, a screen, photos taken in moments when I was alone. It didn't feel like it touched my real life. I told myself I would stop once things got better. I didn't tell my boyfriend because I was scared. Scared of judgment, of misunderstanding, of losing him over something that, in my mind, wasn't emotional or personal. I convinced myself that keeping it private was protecting the relationship. Then last week, everything changed. He was using my laptop because his wasn't charging properly. That wasn't unusual. We've always been pretty open with devices. I went to take a shower, thinking nothing of it. When I came back, he was sitting on the couch, laptop closed, staring at the floor. I knew something was wrong immediately. He asked me if there was anything I wanted to tell him. My heart dropped. I didn't answer right away, and that silence told him everything. He said he wasn't snooping. An email notification popped up. A payment confirmation. My username was there, clear as day. I sat down across from him and admitted it. I told him why I started. I told him it wasn't about replacing him or hiding something emotional. I told him I was embarrassed and scared. He listened quietly. No yelling. No insults. That somehow made it worse. He said he wasn't angry, just hurt. Hurt that I didn't trust him enough to tell him. Hurt that other people had access to a side of me he thought was just for us. He asked if I planned to keep doing it. I didn't have a good answer. The truth is, the money helped. It took pressure off. It made me feel more in control financially. But sitting there, seeing how much it affected him, I realized I had underestimated the emotional weight of it. We didn't break up that night. We went to bed in silence, backs turned to each other, the space between us feeling bigger than ever. Over the next few days, we talked. Slowly. Carefully. Sometimes awkwardly. Sometimes painfully honest. He admitted that it made him question what intimacy meant to us. I admitted that I avoided the conversation because I didn't want to face those questions myself. Now we're in this strange middle space. He hasn't asked me to stop, but he hasn't said he's okay with it either. I haven't logged in since he found out. Not because he demanded it, but because I don't know what the right choice is anymore. I still love him. He still says he loves me. But something has shifted. Not broken, just changed. I guess I'm writing this because I don't know if keeping a secret like that was selfish or just human. I don't know if honesty would have saved us from this moment, or ended us sooner. All I know is that secrets feel small until they're suddenly sitting on the couch across from you, asking questions you're not ready to answer. I mow a large field at a private beach. I was on vacation for 2 weeks, so the grass was very long by the I got back. There were kids playing baseball as I was mowing, and I told them that I was going to go through the playing area really quickly and let them get back to their game. So I was going really fast to let them continue and didn't notice something buried in the long grass. It was dead bird. I ran it over and sprayed rotting bird blood and guts all over some kid. His mom went berserk and yelled at me. Later on, his dad went berserk and yelled at me more. I've accepted that people don't believe and I joke about it, but I'm pretty sure I can connect with animals. Every time I meet a new pet, they always love me and end up spending the whole time following me and laying on me. On multiple occasions I've had wild animals come out of the forest and sniff and kinda hang out around me. And once in health class, my teacher was trying to get us to connect our heart centers to her dogs at home, and she wanted to confirm we could do that by asking her dog a question and confirming the answer with her. Somehow I described her whole house down to some pretty fine details and blew the class away when she proved I was right with pictures of her house. When I was 24 or so, I was drinking at a small local bar. The owner was working that night, a pretty stout guy, and he caught an underage drinker in his bar. He roughed the kid up a bit, threw him outside, and literally put him on the ground 3 or 4x before he went back inside as the kid was drunk and being defiant. He was 18 or 19. He stayed outside a bit with his friend and smoked a cigarette. He was vowing vengeance, so I stayed and lit another smoke to see what came of it. He kept running his mouth and then took off to his truck with a determined look on his face. He returns to the entrance with his friend frantically trying to dissuade him from doing something stupid. He returned with a pistol. This was a small bar, so no one working the door. Drunk me put myself between this drunk kid and the door and began talking to him and gave him one of my cigarettes. I began trying to talk him down and I was making some progress, but this kid was determined. Miraculously, after what seemed like days, I somehow talked him into giving me possession of the pistol. I then just kinda nodded at his friend hoping he would understand my intentions, and his friend restrained him while I re-entered the bar and locked the door behind me and then the side entrance. I then informed the owner and everyone else to stay inside in case this kid had more weapons and called the police. They showed up, but the kid was long gone. So yeah, drunk me may have managed to save a life or two. I guess technically the people there would believe it, but no one I know now would believe the story if I told them. Pretty much my whole life story, which I've learned to just stop telling people because after a while, they refuse to believe that all of this actually happened in one family unit. Which I find weird, as I've met many other people who have had crazier lives than myself. Here's the shortlist. My mom was married 5 times before I was 6 years old. Consequently, I have 3 older brothers, all of us with different biological fathers. One of my brother's dad murdered my dad when I was 6 months old. My mother may have been a part of the murder, but she hasn't been very forthcoming with me. As a kid, I remember going to San Quentin prison with my brother and my mom to visit his dad. My mom's final marriage to my stepdad lasted the longest, 25 years. And he is who I consider my father. He was physically abusive toward my mom and brother. Both my mom and stepdad are drug addicts. I've seen my mom shoot a rifle at my stepdad, seen my stepdad try to stab her. Both are physically disabled. My stepdad with gangrene in his leg bone, finally amputated, and my mother with rods in her back and eventually hepatitis C. To make things fun, we grew up living off the grid in Yosemite National Park. No electricity, no running water. In first grade, 1983. I met the Queen of England when she visited the park. I wanted her to kidnap me. By high school, my stepdad was abusing prescription meds, like 200 to 300 pills a week, sometimes less. Doctors kept wondering how he lived so long. My stepdad once took a chainsaw to his forearm just so he could get a pain prescription. The one brother I was closest to died in a wood-splitting accident at our house in 1990 after a piece of chopping maul chipped off and hit him in the neck, slicing his artery. He was 17, I was 15. I held him as he bled to death. Shortly after my brother's death, a doctor finally refused to fill a pain prescription for my stepdad, so he burnt down the doctor's office and he too went to prison, Solano. My stepdad would finally return from prison after 5 years. It was the healthiest I ever saw him look. It didn't last long. Another brother became a heroin addict, robbed a bank and eventually OD'd last year. The third brother is a high-functioning addict. He's a philosophy professor who is drinking 1 week, abusing Adderall the next. Neither of my parents have ever been clean of drug-alcohol abuse for longer than a few months, minus prison time. In an ironic twist of fate, my stepdad died 2 years ago in a house fire after his oxygen tank tubing got too close to the stove burner and ignited. Boom. I suffer from PTSD, but other than that, I'm pretty normal considering. Never abused drugs or alcohol, had a very tough time with interpersonal relationships, but so do most people, winky face. Despite all of this, I still love my family and accept them for who they are. Oh yeah. I ended up a writer, have a literary agent and my memoir is due out in 2015.